But the goodbyes were also emotional, as everyone realized that the Icelandic waters would claim both men and ships into a watery grave. This fishing culminated towards the end of the 19th century, when it is thought that over 500 schooners, or golettes as they used to be called, were fishing off the coast of Iceland, each with a crew of 20 to 26 men. But why were the French prepared to put themselves through all that?
Já, það þessi einkennilegi hlutur með kaþólska trú. Samkvæmt þeim sig að þá bannað að borða kjöt alltaf 166 dögum á.
The fish was caught on a hand line and filleted and salted on board. It was drudgery in an inhospitable environment. Accidents were common and the crews were riddled with disease, in addition to many of the boats ending up either sinking with everyone on board or breaking after having stranded. During those years, health care in Iceland was very primitive. As a result, there was no help to be had for sick or injured French fishermen, but in the latter part of the 19th century, there was an awakening in France. Hospital ships were sent to the waters and medical shelters were built on the coast. Finally, 3 hospitals were also built, one in Vestmannaeyjar, one in Reykjavik. At the beginning of summer, the golettes came into the fjords, most of them to Fastungsfjord, where the fish was moved into French freight ships, fish by fish. At the same time, they traded with the locals. They received woolen goods, very thick gloves, socks and sweaters. In return, the Icelanders received pilot biscuits, a popular dry biscuit that could be stored an inordinate amount of time, fishing tackle, salt, coal, and even red wine or cognac. But all adventures come to an end. These fisheries culminated at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th centuries. But after the First World War began, the French had other things to think about than fishing off the coast of Iceland. Gradually, the memories of the French fishermen faded in Iceland, but Icelanders did not want this remarkable history to be forgotten. Most of the houses had been moved and were in bad condition. The hospital had, for example, been moved across the fjord to Hafnarnes, where there had been a fishing port. But the area had become uninhabited and the hospital was at the mercy. As a result, it was decided to move all the houses together by the doctor's residence and create a little French village with a hotel and historical museum. The architect firm Argos designed the village. They started by moving the hospital back, and it was partly transported without being taken apart. But it was revealed that some of the wood was badly decayed, so that some of the houses had to be taken apart one piece of wood at a time, and the holes had to be bumped. It was meticulous work, and when all damages had been mended, it all had to be put together again. 2013, and show how much has been accomplished inside and out. It's still in rather rough condition. It was decided to connect it to the old hospital by an underground tunnel underneath the street. The historical exhibition starts on the ground floor of the doctor's residence, which also serves.
Þetta ná öllum þessum svipum, þetta efni sem við notum gerir það að verkum að við náum alveg ótrúlegustu hlutum, öllum hrukkum og öllum bólum og allt sem í andlitinu.
But from there you go into the tunnel, which is decorated in the style of a golette, with the accompanying ocean sounds, smell and creaking of the boat.
Here, one of those masts, somewhat badly worn. Amazing that it still exists after all this time. And this is another part of the museum. This building was moved here, and that's the doctor's old residence. And over there is the hotel, which we'll get to by going back into the museum and underneath this road. Obviously, this building is the original church restored. It is the epitome of simplicity that I have seen on this trip. Or as if these chandeliers or light fittings were original. About where that purple circle is. And we'll get some video through the rain and the fog. If you can notice right out there, it looks like there must be a lot of rocks, a continuation of this point off in that direction, just barely breaking the surface, but creating all of that surf out there. Birds don't seem. The fog and the rain finally cleared for a moment, and there's a hazy sun out. Remember what this green stone is. It looks like a composite. It has different colored crystals in it. One green stone is malachite. I don't think that's this. Southeast corner of Iceland's coast, at least, is typified by this topography, with an incredible number of falls and streams flowing off of those mountains. But when you drive through a day and a half of rain, it's no big surprise. When you add to it the fact that they have huge glaciers up on top of some of this area that feed some of these rivers. Pretty much typifies the slopes of the mountains in this southeastern part of Iceland, at least along the coastline area. These falls that litter, in the positive way, the hillsides, because there's so much water, and that belies the amount of water that's literally sitting, flowing slowly like the Okefenokee swamp does, through all that green material you can see. That's why it once in a while comes together in a stream and evidences these line of pearl falls systems. These mountains seem considerably different from the mountains we saw in West Fjords. They were huge, bull-nosed mountains. These are sharp, like you'd expect to see in the Tetons in Glacier National Park. Notice that razor's edge right in the center at the top. And that's just one ridge line. If the fog would clear, you'd see some jagged pointed tops of some of those peaks up there. Pretty little blue buttercup that I hadn't seen before. It's the far end of that fjord we were on a moment ago. We were looking across at the mountain peaks. We've gone around that and come back up the other side. Here's a closer view of those mountains. Not that it will give you much more insight, but they are impressive. Notice the jaggedness of those profiles. Cute little harbor in this small little fishing village that, like most, are relatively nondescript. There was never anything other than utilitarianism as an aesthetic concept here. It was over there somewhere that we first looked at those large jagged mountains moments ago. Two large flocks of what I think are swans. So this is the swan that I had been seeing. You see swans all over, usually in pairs, once with 3 cygnets. This is a very beautiful unnamed falls right along the road.